What's up, everyone? Chris Yandel here for Channelfireball.com, and welcome to another edition of Audio Articles, where we bring you articles written by the top Magic the Gathering pros in audio form, so you can listen on the go wherever and whenever you want for free, Monday through Friday. We've also got a lot of really great content on YouTube, so head on over to YouTube, search for Channel Fireball, and ring the bell next to the subscribe button. And if you want to make it easier to listen to the podcast, ask Siri to play the most recent episode of Channel Fireball's podcast, and you're all set. We're also available on iTunes and Spotify. Today's episode is written by Mike Sigrist. Sigi's going to talk about a couple of the cards that he really likes from the 2019 core set. Thanks for being with us today, and here is Sigi's favorite 10 cards from Core 2019 by Mike Sigrist. Core 2019 is right around the corner, and I'm pretty excited to get to bust open some packs and get to work playing with these cards. One thing I've noticed about this set is while I don't think the set is too weak, it's definitely a weaker set than Dominaria overall. I also noticed a lot of build-around type cards in the set, which makes it excellent for brewing. I've comprised a list of my favorite cards from Core 2019 for Standard. While I think that the set has some cool things going on, I think in a Standard format as large as this one, we'll see more from most of these cards after rotation rather than before. Coming in at number 10, Chromium the Mutable. Chromium the Mutable is a 7/7 flying flash legendary dragon creature that can't be countered. It costs 4 generic mana, 1 white, 1 blue, and 1 black. And it says, discard a card. Until end of turn, Chromium the Mutable becomes a human with base power and toughness 1/1, loses all abilities, and gains hexproof. It can't be blocked this turn. Chromium the Mutable is an extremely well-designed card. Chromium is clearly a card designed to end control mirrors faster, and after my experience in GP Pittsburgh, it couldn't come any sooner. Chromium has the ability to dodge removal by discarding a card, but it leaves it vulnerable in combat against flying creatures that already blocked it, or when you try and ambush an attacker with it. This is the kind of hexproof ability I can get behind. This card will likely not end up in too many main decks unless something strange happens where control becomes a huge share of the metagame. But it will be a useful tool that I think people are going to want for control mirrors and out-of-control decks against slower mid-range decks. I think we may see this card as a one-of in current Standard before rotation as a haymaker out of Esper control specifically for mirrors. But I could also see Chromium seeing play in a deck alongside the next card on my list, Fireblood, as both a dragon to cast and discard to it, to then reanimate later as a resilient threat. Chromium will have some time to shine. Number 9, Fireblood. Fireblood is a planeswalker for 1 generic mana and 2 red with 3 loyalty that has the abilities as follows. +1, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. +1, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. Spend this mana only to cast dragon spells. And -7, create 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens with flying. I won't lie, I thought this card was pretty weak when I first saw it. We don't have too many dragons in Standard at the moment, and while we get a few more in Core 2019, I didn't really see a shell for it. After discussing it and thinking about it a little bit, I came around that maybe Fireblood could be a worthwhile build-around. Sarkhan has the ability to churn out dragons quickly, and also the ability to discard cards to draw new ones. My first thought was a dragon deck with Liliana Death's Majesty, or other reanimation type spells like Rise from the Grave. Sarkhan can do both. He can cast these dragons and discard them to be brought back later. With both Glorybringer and Demanding Dragon currently in the format, we could even see a deck going deep on 5 drops to exploit the Planeswalker. This card reminds me a lot of Mox Amber in that it's potentially a great card if the shell exists, but it may not exist right now or ever. I definitely have my eyes on Fireblood, but I won't be surprised if it's a home run or a flop. I can see this card having some immediate impact on Standard because of its great synergy with Liliana Death's Majesty and the fact that Glorybringer is still around. And I could also see some more potent dragons being printed, giving the Planeswalker a boost in the future. This is one of the cards that I'm most excited about brewing with. Number 8, Reclamation Sage. Reclamation Sage is a reprint. It's a 2/1 elf shaman creature for 2 generic and 1 green that says, when Reclamation Sage enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Rec Sage is just a great addition to any Standard format. While it's a little bit of a lazy addition to my list, it's a card that's almost certainly going to see play in decks like Green-Black Constrictor that utilize Adventurous Impulse. A couple of downsides to Rec Sage over traditional naturalized effects is that its body lines up poorly against Goblin Chainwhirler, and with Blue-White Godpharaoh's Gift running around, you may really want your enchantment or artifact removal to be instant speed. That said, this card is much better against decks like Blue-White Control, where eating a cast out and advancing your position with the same card is a huge benefit. I think Rex Age is going to be a good standard card, but we may not see it as our enchantment and artifact removal of choice until after Godfarrow's Gift rotates. Number 7, Liliana Untouched by Death. Liliana Untouched by Death is a 4 casting cost planeswalker with 4 loyalty for 2 generic and 2 black, with the abilities as follows. +1, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If at least one of them is a zombie card, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. -2, target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of zombies you control. And -3, you may cast zombie cards from your graveyard this turn. There's a lot of zombies making their way into Core 2019, and with some support from the old cast in Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation, there may just be some room for zombies to have an immediate impact on Standard. Liliana is a payoff for building a zombie deck much like the one that Jerry T won Pro Tour Amonkhet with. Liliana resembles Chandra Torture Defiance in these decks by both giving you a +1 that can drain out your opponent, a - that can eat up a creature with the right supporting cast, and also generate you card advantage with its -3 ability, allowing you to recast zombies in your graveyard. With Liliana's Mastery, Lord of the Accursed, and new additions Death Baron and Diregraph Ghoul, Zombies is an extremely deep tribe, deeper than I think any of the Ixalan tribes. I think Zombies is the best new deck to test from the get-go, and Liliana Untouched by Death is a great payoff for that strategy. Unfortunately for Liliana, if that deck doesn't pan out, she has nowhere to go. Coming in at number 6, Tezzeret Artifice Master. Tezzeret Artifice Master is a 5 loyalty, 5 casting cost planeswalker for 3 generic and 2 blue that has the abilities as follows. +1, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. 0, draw a card. If you control 3 or more artifacts, draw 2 cards instead. -9, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Tezzeret looked great to me when I first read it, and then I remembered good old Goblin Chainwhirler. That said, once sets rotate from Standard and Goblin Chainwhirler isn't put into play every 3 or 4 turns in every match, Tezzeret is a really powerful planeswalker. Tezzeret has a plus ability that gains an onboard advantage while also protecting itself, a 0 ability that allows us to draw up to 2 cards a turn given it's in the right build, and an ultimate that closes a game out in short order. On top of all that, Tezzeret has a good amount of starting loyalty to help it survive long enough to get a great deal of value out of it. Tezzeret also has incredible synergy with Karn Scion of Urza, and I expect and hope to see those 2 cards as good friends once rotation hits. I'm skeptical that Tezzeret will see much play in the later stages of current Standard, but once there isn't so much incentive to be mostly red and Goblin Chainwhirler becomes much tougher to cast, I think we may see Tezzeret create its own archetype alongside Karn Scion of Urza. Number 5, Stitcher's Supplier. Stitcher's Supplier is a 1/1 zombie for 1 black that says, when Stitcher's Supplier enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. Stitcher's Supplier is one of the coolest cards from Core 2019. There's a few archetypes that come to mind when I see Stitcher's Supplier, but my mind immediately goes to Godfarrow's Gift with Gate to the Afterlife. Stitcher's Supplier fills your graveyard in a hurry, while also being a creature itself to help with the gate. With Minister of Inquiries and Stitcher's Supplier, I could see Blue-Black Gift being an immediate contender in Standard. Stitcher's Supplier is just a better version of Minister of Inquiries, since it gets value both before and after it's interacted with. Stitcher's Supplier is also a zombie, and plays very nicely with Liliana Untouched by Death's -3 ability by filling the graveyard with creatures to then cast later, or to just be exiled by Graveyard Marshal. It's worth noting that Stitcher's Supplier dies to Goblin Chainwhirler, but that's not necessarily a bad thing because if you put this card in your deck, you likely want it to die fairly quickly to load up your graveyard even more. Stitcher's Supplier is a card we'll see a lot of in upcoming weeks of Standard, and I'm excited to see if it'll make an immediate impact or not. Number 4, Demanding Dragon. Demanding Dragon is a 5/5 flying dragon creature for 3 generic and 2 red that says, when Demanding Dragon enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target opponent unless that player sacrifices a creature. I really like Demanding Dragon. It's a 5/5 flyer that essentially has an ability that resembles haste. Your opponent can either sacrifice a creature or take 5 immediately, and with Chainwhirler around, there's far less tokens and meaningless creatures laying around to sacrifice. With Glorybringer still around, it's a tough sell to put Demanding Dragon in your deck, but once Glorybringer rotates, there's going to be an opening in the 5-mana slot in red, and Demanding Dragon might fit the bill to replace good old Glorybringer. I can only imagine drawing these in multiples like I used to with Siege Rhino. 5-mana creatures usually have to have haste or some built-in value so it doesn't only trade down with a removal spell like Vraska's Contempt. It's worth noting that Demanding Dragon outsizes creatures like Glorybringer and Rekindling Phoenix, while also avoids being destroyed by Chandra Torch of Defiance. I think Demanding Dragon has the potential to be the go-to red 5-drop once Glorybringer rotates, and potentially even sooner since it lines up well against other red cards. Number 3, Banefire. Banefire is also a reprint. It's a sorcery for X and 1 red, and it says, Banefire deals X damage to target creature or player. If X is 5 or more, Banefire can't be countered by spells or abilities, and the damage can't be prevented. Banefire is going to make an immediate impact on Standard. Right now, we see people playing a fair amount of Fight with Fire because it both hedges against Lyra Dawnbringer and allows you to spend all that mana you acquire from Settle the Wreckage. Banefire does the job Fight with Fire is trying to accomplish, but in a much more efficient way. The thing I like most about Banefire is it'll force Teferi Hero of Dominaria players to come with a game plan on how to win the game in a reasonable time frame. Blue-white control players will be forced to have a win condition or ultimately just inevitably die to Banefire off the top. Banefire will be immediately inserted into mono-red sideboards and may also find a spot in black-red aggro sideboards in smaller numbers. Number 2, Graveyard Marshal. Graveyard Marshal is a 3/2 zombie soldier creature for 2 black mana that says, if you pay 2 and 1 black and exile a creature card from your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. Graveyard Marshal is just a great 2-drop creature that scales well in the length of the game. As a 2-drop, it hits relatively hard, but can also take over the game on its own by churning out extra creatures. When you use it with Liliana Untouched by Death and Stitcher Supplier, there's always going to be food for the Graveyard Marshal. I see Graveyard Marshal as a premium 2-drop in zombies, yes, but I also think it's a great 2-drop in a deck with no zombie synergies at all. This card resembles Scrap Heap Scrounger to me, and while 2 black mana is a much tougher sell than Scrap Heap Scrounger, Graveyard Marshal can take over games in ways that Scrap Heap Scrounger never could by going wide on its own. Graveyard Marshal is going to see Standard play, and I think it might push zombies back into the Tier 1 category. And coming in at number 1, Nicol the Ravager. Nicol the Ravager is a 4/4 flying legendary dragon creature for 1 generic, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red that says, when Nicol the Ravager enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. You can also pay 4 generic mana, 1 blue, 1 black, and 1 red to exile Nicol the Ravager, then return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. When you flip Nicol the Ravager, he becomes Nicol the Arisen. Nicol the Arisen has 7 loyalty and has 4 abilities that are as follows. +2, draw 2 cards. -3, Nicol the Arisen deals 10 damage to target creature or planeswalker. -4, put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And -12, exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. Maybe I'm a little too hyped on Nicol the Ravager, but it looks like one of the major reasons to buy the set to me. It's a serviceable 4/4 flying body that gets a card of value as it enters the battlefield, but you can also take over games on its own when it flips. Nicol the Ravager is a perfect fit into a Grixis Energy style deck that wants to grind value while also applying pressure. I don't buy the argument that you can get blown out when you try to flip Nicol the Ravager into Nicol the Arisen, because if Nicol the Ravager is still flying around and dealing damage when you get to 7 mana, you're likely pretty safe from a removal spell if it's attacking successfully anyways. It's really tough that late in the game to be able to just take 4 on the chin when you have a removal spell ready to go. I also think that Nicol is going to flip often enough to matter. The only thing holding Nicol the Ravager back at all is its steep mana commitment. Nicol plays incredibly well alongside Liliana Death's Majesty, so I could even see sliding some red mana into a deck like blue-black midrange just to get Nicol the Ravager into the mix. Simply minus Liliana Death's Majesty to return Nicol, get another card out of the opponent's hand, and you do all of this with open mana, allowing you to immediately flip Nicol. Nicol to me is the best card in Core 2019. I just hope that it can find a home and can compete with all the other powerful cards that are still in current standard, because I'm a bit worried once we lose some of the dual lands and Ether Hub in standard, it might be a little too difficult to make 3-color decks mana work, but I'm sure we'll find a way. So overall, I think Core 2019 is a pretty cool set, but it does seem to be on the weaker side after exploring Dominaria. There's a lot of different avenues to explore with the set. Whether it's an artifact deck with Tezzeret, Artifice Master, and Psy Master Thopterist, zombies, or a Dragons deck, Core 2019 has a few awesome archetypes to explore, and I'm excited to get started. What are your favorite cards from Core 2019? That does it for this episode of Audio Articles. Make sure to head over to channelfireball.com and leave Sigi a comment about what you thought about today's article. Or you can hit him up on Twitter at msigrist83. Also, make sure to check out cfbevents.com. You'll find all the information about the upcoming GPs there. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for being with us today, and I hope to see you soon. And until then, peace.